The distress signal came through the void like a scream in the darkness. It pierced through subspace frequencies that most civilized species used only for emergencies, carrying with it the desperation of an entire world facing extinction. Commander Zara Chen stood in the communication center of the UES Vengeance, her dark eyes scanning the translated message that scrolled across the holographic display. The ship hummed around her with the controlled violence of a predator at rest, its hull scarred from a dozen campaigns across the galaxy's rim. "Another SOS from the hegemony worlds," reported Lieutenant Torres, his voice carrying the weariness that came from hearing too many such calls. "The Cathara have broken through their outer defenses. 3 colony worlds have already gone dark." Chen studied the tactical readout. The hegemony had always looked down on humanity, calling them Deathworlders, with a mixture of fear and disgust. Earth's crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, and violent weather patterns had forged humans into something the galaxy's more civilized races found disturbing. Where other species had evolved on garden worlds with gentle suns and peaceful ecosystems, humanity had clawed its way to the stars from a planet that seemed determined to kill everything on it. The irony wasn't lost on her that these same aliens who had once voted to quarantine humanity were now begging for help. "What's the fleet admiral's position?" Chen asked. Torres checked his console. "Admiral Reese is maintaining radio silence, standard protocol when the hegemony calls. We're not technically allied with them." Chen nodded, understanding the politics. The Galactic hegemony controlled most of the core worlds, maintaining peace through bureaucracy and endless committees. They had banned weapons of mass destruction, outlawed military research, and created a society so sanitized that even their police forces carried non-lethal equipment. It was a paradise for those who valued order above all else. Humanity had never been invited to join. The humans had been expanding outward along the galaxy's edge for 3 centuries, building rough colonies on worlds others deemed uninhabitable. They fought pirates, hostile wildlife, and each other with a casual brutality that made the hegemony's diplomats faint. Their ships were crude, ugly things designed for war rather than beauty, bristling with weapons that violated dozens of galactic conventions. But now, the Cathara had returned. Chen had studied the historical records. The Cathara were an ancient race that had once ruled a quarter of the galaxy before vanishing into dark space. They were perfect biological killing machines, bred for war and sustained by conquest. The hegemony had thought them extinct, a problem solved by time and complacency. They had been wrong. "Ma'am," Torres called out, his voice tense, "we're receiving a direct communication from Admiral Reese." The holographic display shifted, showing the weathered face of Fleet Admiral Marcus Reese. He looked like he had been carved from asteroid rock, all sharp edges and cold purpose. Behind him, Chen could see the bridge of the UES Retribution, the flagship of the Terran Defense Fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Reese. I'm sure you've all seen the hegemony's distress calls. For 200 years, they've called us savages. They've imposed trade sanctions, denied us membership in their precious council, and treated us like rabid animals that need to be contained." Reese paused, his gray eyes holding the weight of old grudges. "Today, we have a choice. We can sit here in our corner of space and watch their perfect civilization burn, or we can remind the galaxy why Deathworlders don't stay dead." Chen felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came before battle. Around her, the crew of the Vengeance moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapon systems and updating tactical displays. "I'm not asking anyone to die for people who despise us," Reese continued. "But I am asking you to die for something bigger. The Cathara don't distinguish between humans and hegemony citizens. If they reclaim their old empire, everyone dies. We fight now, or we fight later, when we're the only ones left." The Admiral's expression hardened. "This is not a rescue mission. This is not peacekeeping. The hegemony has spent centuries creating a soft galaxy full of soft people who don't know how to fight. We're going to show the Cathara what happens when you threaten a species that learned to kill before it learned to dream. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Chen looked around at her crew, seeing her own resolve reflected in their faces. They were all volunteers, every one of them. The Terran Defense Fleet didn't conscript soldiers. It didn't need to. There were always enough humans willing to fight. "Helm, set course for the Kepler system," Chen ordered. "Maximum burn." The Vengeance shuddered as its massive engines came online, pushing the ship toward the speed that would have torn apart vessels built by more civilized races. Human ships were built like their creators, tough, stubborn, and designed to survive things that should kill them. As they accelerated toward the war zone, Chen pulled up the intelligence reports on the Cathara. The images made her stomach clench. They were 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor that could stop small arms fire, with claws capable of rending metal. Their ships were organic growths rather than constructions, able to repair themselves and reproduce by consuming other vessels. The hegemony had tried to fight them with their usual methods: diplomatic protests, economic sanctions, and police actions led by peacekeeping forces that had never seen real combat. The results had been predictably catastrophic. "Ma'am, we're receiving updated casualty reports from the front," Torres reported. "The hegemony's 4th Fleet was completely destroyed at Proxima Station. No survivors." Chen wasn't surprised. The hegemony's ships were built for exploration and trade, with weapons as an afterthought. Their crews were scientists and diplomats, not soldiers. Against an enemy that had been designed for war, they might as well have been sending flower arrangements. But the Terran fleet was different. Every human ship carried enough firepower to level a planet. Their crews had cut their teeth fighting pirates, hostile aliens, and the countless dangers that lurked in the galaxy's dark corners. They didn't fight fair because fair fights got you killed. "Tactical, I want a full weapons inventory," Chen commanded. "Every missile, every railgun round, every energy cell, and send word to engineering. I want the antimatter reserves at maximum capacity." The bridge crew moved to comply, their actions smooth and professional. Chen watched them work and felt a familiar pride. These were her people, forged in the same cosmic furnace that had created humanity itself. They didn't need speeches about honor or duty. They fought because fighting was what humans did. Hours passed as the fleet moved through jump space, each ship a dark arrow aimed at the heart of the conflict. Chen used the time to study the tactical situation, mapping Cathara positions and identifying strategic targets. The enemy had captured 17 systems in the past month, each victory making them stronger as they consumed the defeated fleets. "Admiral Reese is requesting a conference with all ship commanders," Torres announced. Chen activated her personal communicator, joining the encrypted channel that linked every ship in the fleet. Dozens of faces appeared in her display, each one wearing the same expression of grim determination. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Reese began, "we'll be dropping out of jump space in 6 hours. Our target is the Altair system, where the Cathara are currently digesting what's left of the hegemony's 2nd Fleet." A tactical display appeared, showing the system's layout. Red markers indicated Cathara positions, while blue dots showed the remnants of the hegemony forces. "Intelligence suggests the enemy has approximately 30 ships in system, including at least 3 of their larger bioforms. They've been feeding on the wreckage, growing stronger by the hour." Commander Walsh of the UES Thunderbolt raised her hand. "What about civilian evacuations? The hegemony has 3 million people on Altair Prime." Reese's expression didn't change. "The evacuation ships left 2 days ago. Anyone still on that planet is either dead or hiding. Our job isn't to save them, it's to make sure the Cathara don't live to threaten anyone else." Chen understood. This wasn't about heroic rescues or dramatic last-minute saves. This was about mathematics. Kill the enemy before they became too strong to kill. It was a lesson the galaxy had forgotten during centuries of peace. Humans remembered. Rules of engagement are simple, Reese continued. No prisoners, no mercy, no quarter given or expected. The Kithara understand only one language, and we're going to speak it fluently. The conference ended, leaving Chen alone with her thoughts. She walked through the ship's corridors, checking on her crew and ensuring everything was ready for battle. The Vengeance carried 800 souls, each one a volunteer who had chosen to stand between civilization and extinction. In the hangar bay, she found Master Chief Kowalski overseeing the preparation of boarding pods. The grizzled veteran looked up as she approached, his scarred face creasing into what might have been a smile. Pods are ready, ma'am. Enough firepower to turn a Kithara hive ship into scrap metal. Chen nodded. Boarding actions were humanity's specialty, the kind of close-quarters combat that made other species nauseous. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey across continents and fighting hand-to-hand with creatures twice their size. The Kithara were about to learn why that mattered. "Time to drop?" she asked. Kowalski checked his chronometer. 4 hours and counting. The boys are ready. Been too long since we had a proper fight. Chen understood the sentiment. Humans weren't built for peace, not in the way the hegemony understood it. They needed conflict, challenge, something to push against. It was what made them dangerous and what made them human. As she returned to the bridge, Chen felt the familiar calm that came before battle. The Kithara thought they were reclaiming their ancient empire, rebuilding their strength by consuming the weak. They had forgotten that not all prey stayed down when you tried to devour it. Some prey had claws of its own. The jump countdown reached its final minutes, and Chen took her position in the command chair. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for battle with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had done this before. "All ships report ready for combat," Torres announced. Chen opened the ship-wide communication system. "This is your captain speaking. In a few minutes, we're going to drop into a system controlled by an enemy that thinks it owns the galaxy. We're going to remind them that humans don't ask permission to exist." She paused, looking around at her crew. "The hegemony called us savages, and they were right. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day, and we survived by being harder than anything it could throw at us. Today, we're going to show the Kithara what happens when savages decide to fight back." The countdown reached 0, and reality twisted around them as the fleet dropped back into normal space. Ahead lay the Altair system, burning with the light of war. The first thing Commander Zara Chen noticed as the Terran fleet materialized in the Altair system was the smell. Even through the ship's recycled atmosphere, the Vengeance's sensors painted a picture of death that seemed to reach across space itself. The wreckage of the hegemony's second fleet drifted in slowly expanding clouds of debris, twisted metal mixing with biological matter in ways that made her crew's faces pale. "Sensor sweep complete," reported Ensign Park, her voice steady despite what the displays showed. 32 Kithara vessels confirmed, ranging from frigate-class bioforms to 3 massive hive ships. They're feeding, ma'am. Chen watched the tactical display as red markers moved through the debris field like scavengers. The Kithara ships weren't metal and circuitry like human vessels. They were alive, growing and changing as they consumed the remains of their enemies. She could see tendrils extending from their hulls, drawing in wreckage and breaking it down into raw materials for reproduction. It was exactly what the intelligence reports had warned about, but seeing it happen made something cold and angry settle in Chen's chest. "Admiral Reese is signaling the fleet," Torres announced. The Admiral's voice came across the communication channel, calm and controlled despite what they were all seeing. "All ships, this is retribution. The enemy has detected our arrival and is moving to engage. Remember, these things reproduce by eating our ships. Don't give them the chance." Chen opened her own channel to the crew. "Battle stations. Seal all compartments and prepare for combat acceleration. This is what we trained for." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship as the Vengeance's crew moved to their positions. In the engine room, Chief Martinez pushed the fusion reactors to maximum output, flooding the ship's systems with the power it would need for the coming fight. On the gun decks, teams of specialists checked and rechecked the massive railguns that served as the ship's primary weapons. The Cathara were moving now, their bioships flowing through space with an organic grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. The three hive ships formed the center of their formation, each one the size of a city and bristling with weapon pods that pulsed like diseased organs. Incoming transmission from the lead hive ship, Torres reported, surprise clear in his voice. "Put it through," Chen ordered. The main display flickered, showing something that might have once been humanoid but had been changed by centuries of biomodification. The Cathara commander's face was a nightmare of chitinous plates and compound eyes, its voice a clicking rasp that the translation software struggled to process. "Primitives," it said, the word dripping with contempt. "You arrived too late to save your fellow meat creatures. We have already begun incorporating their genetic material into our breeding stock. Soon, we will do the same to your pathetic species." Chen leaned forward in her command chair, her expression never changing. "This is Commander Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. I have one message for you." She paused, letting the silence stretch across space. "Go to hell." The transmission cut, and Chen turned to her weapons officer. "Target the lead hive ship. Full spread, tungsten penetrators." "Ma'am, at this range the accuracy will be poor," the officer warned. "I'm not trying to hit it," Chen replied. "I'm trying to get its attention." The Vengeance's main railguns fired in sequence, sending streams of tungsten slugs across the void at a significant fraction of light speed. The shots scattered across the enemy formation, most missing entirely, but a few striking glancing blows against Cathara hulls. The effect was immediate. The bioships turned toward the human fleet with predatory focus, abandoning their feeding to engage what they saw as new prey. "All ships, execute Alpha pattern," Admiral Reese's voice commanded across the fleet network. Chen smiled grimly as she watched the Terran fleet split into three groups, each one moving on a different vector toward the enemy. It was a classic human tactic: divide the enemy's attention, force them to choose targets, then hit them where they weren't looking. The Cathara responded as expected, their hive ships each focusing on a different human formation, while their smaller vessels spread out to provide support. It was a reasonable tactical decision for most enemies. They weren't facing most enemies. "Formation Bravo, execute Thunder Run," Reese commanded. Chen watched as 12 human destroyers suddenly accelerated to their maximum speed, diving straight toward the largest hive ship with complete disregard for their own safety. The Cathara focused their fire on the charging vessels, bioplasma and acid projectiles filling space around the human ships. 2 destroyers died in the first few seconds, their hulls dissolving under concentrated fire. A third lost its port engine, but kept coming, trailing atmosphere in sparks. The Cathara commander must have thought it was watching a desperate suicide charge. It was wrong. "Formation Alpha, flanking maneuver," Reese ordered. While the enemy concentrated on the obvious threat, 20 human cruisers and battleships swept around the edge of the system, their stealth systems masking their approach until they were almost on top of the Cathara left flank. Chen felt a surge of professional admiration as she watched the perfectly executed maneuver unfold. The humans opened fire at point-blank range, their concentrated barrage tearing through bioship hulls that hadn't evolved to handle sustained railgun bombardment. 3 Cathara vessels died in the opening seconds, their organic structures rupturing and spilling bodily fluids into the void. "Formation Charlie, close and engage," came the final command. Chen's own group, 15 ships strong, accelerated toward the confused enemy center. The Cathara were trying to turn to face this new threat while still dealing with the destroyers that had reached their primary hive ship. "Targeting solutions locked," reported the weapons officer. "All guns ready. Fire!" Chen ordered. The Vengeance shuddered as its main batteries discharged, sending streams of tungsten death toward the nearest Cathara cruiser. The bioship tried to evade, its living hull flexing and twisting in ways no mechanical vessel could match. But human targeting computers had been designed to track missiles and fighters moving at significant fractions of light speed. The slugs punched through the creature's carapace like bullets through flesh, each impact sending shock waves through its nervous system. The Cathara vessel writhed in apparent agony before its vital organs ruptured and it went still. Around the Vengeance, the rest of Formation Charlie was having similar success. Human ships fought like their creators, efficiently, ruthlessly, and with a complete disregard for anything resembling fair play. They used overlapping fields of fire, coordinated targeting, and tactical doctrines that had been refined through centuries of actual warfare. The Cathara fought like animals. Powerful, dangerous animals, but animals nonetheless. "Ma'am, the lead hive ship is launching fighters," Park reported. Chen looked at the tactical display and saw hundreds of small bioforms streaming from the massive vessel. Each one was the size of a human fighter but grown rather than built, their wings beating through space as if they were flying through atmosphere rather than vacuum. "Launch our birds," Chen commanded. The Vengeance's hangar bays opened, disgorging 2 squadrons of human fighters. Unlike the organic Cathara craft, these were angular machines of metal and ceramic, their pilots sealed inside armored cockpits that could survive impacts that would kill any living creature. The 2 fighter forces met in the space between the capital ships, and Chen watched as humanity's technological advantage became clear. The Cathara fighters were faster and more maneuverable, but human pilots fought with a tactical awareness that centuries of natural selection had burned into their genes. They hunted in packs, used coordinated attacks, and showed no mercy to wounded enemies. Within minutes, the space around the hive ship was filled with the drifting corpses of biofighters. "Admiral, this is Commander Walsh," came a voice over the fleet channel. "The Thunder Run worked. We've breached the primary hive ship's hull and are deploying boarding parties." Chen felt a cold satisfaction. Boarding actions were humanity's signature move, the kind of close-quarters combat that made other species nervous. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters and pack fighters, and those instincts served them well when fighting inside enemy ships. "Confirmed, Thunderbolt," Admiral Reese responded. "All ships, continue engagement. Show no mercy." The battle raged across the Altair system, human ships moving with deadly precision while the Cathara responded with increasing desperation. Their bioships were powerful, but they had been designed to overwhelm peaceful civilizations that didn't know how to fight. Humanity knew how to fight. "Direct hit on the secondary hive ship," Torres reported. "Their hull is venting atmosphere and biological fluids." Chen watched as the massive biovessel tried to regenerate its damaged sections, new tissue growing to seal the breaches. But human railguns kept firing, each impact preventing the healing process and adding new wounds to the growing collection. It was like watching a large animal being brought down by persistent predators, and Chen supposed that analogy wasn't far from the truth. "Ma'am, we're receiving a distress signal from the Cathara flagship," Park announced, her voice carrying a note of surprise. "They're trying to surrender?" Chen asked. "Negative. They're calling for reinforcements." Chen's expression hardened. The last thing the galaxy needed was more Cathara ships in this system. "Jam all their communications. Nothing gets out." "Already on it, ma'am," Torres confirmed. "ECM suite is at full power." The battle continued for another hour. Human ships systematically destroying everything in the system that carried Cathara DNA. They showed no mercy, because mercy was a luxury that prey animals couldn't afford when facing an enemy that reproduced by consuming the defeated. When the last bioship finally went dark, its organic hull ruptured and bleeding into space, Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The immediate threat was over, but she knew this was just the beginning. "Admiral, this is Vengeance," she reported. "System is clear. No Kythera survivors detected." "Confirmed, Vengeance. All ships, begin recovery operations. I want every piece of Kythera technology analyzed and cataloged. We need to understand what we're fighting." Chen nodded, understanding the necessity. The Kythera weren't going to stop with one defeat, and humanity needed every advantage it could get for the battles to come. As her crew began the grim work of examining the battlefield, Chen thought about the hegemony worlds that had called for help. They were still out there, still under threat, and still completely unprepared for the kind of war that was coming. But that was about to change. Humanity had answered their call for help, and now the galaxy would learn what Deathworlders brought to a fight. The Kythera thought they were reclaiming their ancient empire. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to kill before it learned to dream, and had never forgotten either lesson. 3 days after the battle, Commander Zara Chen stood in the cargo bay of the UES Vengeance, watching her crew catalog the remains of Kythera biotechnology. The organic weapons and armor fragments lay in sealed containers, each piece representing a puzzle that human scientists were eager to solve. Dr. Sarah Kim, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, approached Chen with a datapad in her hands and concern written across her face. She was one of the few civilians in the Terran fleet, a researcher who had volunteered to study humanity's enemies in order to better fight them. "Commander, you need to see this," Dr. Kim said, her voice carrying the weight of discovery. "We've analyzed the genetic material from the hive ships, and the results are disturbing." Chen accepted the datapad, scanning the biological readouts that meant little to her military-trained mind. "Give it to me in simple terms, Doctor." "The Kythera we just fought weren't the original species," Kim explained. "They're a hybrid, created by incorporating genetic material from dozens of different races. I can identify markers from at least 15 distinct species in their DNA, including some that match hegemony records." The implication hit Chen like a physical blow. They've been eating entire civilizations. Not just eating them, incorporating them. Every victory makes them stronger, more adaptable. They take the best traits from their enemies and add them to their own biological arsenal. Kim pulled up a holographic display showing the genetic analysis. This explains how they've been able to expand so quickly. They're not just conquering territory, they're harvesting evolution itself. Chen studied the data, her tactical mind immediately grasping the strategic implications. An enemy that grew stronger with each victory was the worst possible scenario for a prolonged war. It meant that every battle lost didn't just cost ships and personnel, it actively strengthened the opposition. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Based on their current rate of expansion and genetic integration, I estimate they could overrun the entire hegemony within 6 months. After that..." Kim shrugged helplessly. "They'd have access to billions of genetic templates and the industrial capacity of 100 worlds." Before Chen could respond, her communicator chimed with an incoming priority message. She activated it to find Admiral Reese's weathered face looking back at her. "All ship commanders report to the Retribution immediately," he said without preamble. "We have visitors." An hour later, Chen found herself in the flagship's main conference room, surrounded by the other captains and commanders of the Terran fleet. At the head of the table sat Admiral Reese, his expression unreadable. Across from the human officers sat 3 figures that Chen recognized from diplomatic files, representatives of the Galactic Hegemony Council. The lead delegate was an elegant Altarian, her blue-tinted skin and elaborate robes marking her as nobility. Beside her sat a stocky Centauran and a tall, ethereal vegan whose species communicated as much through pheromones as speech. All three looked distinctly uncomfortable in the military setting. "Captain Chen," Admiral Reese said by way of introduction, "allow me to present Delegate Cythera of the Hegemony Council. She has a proposal for us." Delegate Cythera rose gracefully, her movements carrying the practiced dignity of someone accustomed to diplomatic protocol. When she spoke, her voice carried the musical quality typical of her species, but Chen could hear the underlying tension. "Admiral Reese, Captain Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Hegemony, I want to express our gratitude for your intervention in the Altair system. Your actions saved countless lives and demonstrated that the human species can be reasonable allies." Chen kept her expression neutral, but she could feel the condescension in the delegate's tone. Even when asking for help, the hegemony couldn't resist treating humans like unruly children who had finally done something right. Admiral Reese leaned back in his chair, his gray eyes fixed on the Altarian. "You didn't travel across 3 star systems to thank us, delegate. What do you want?" Cythera's composure flickered slightly at the blunt question. "The Council has authorized me to offer humanity an emergency membership in the Galactic Hegemony. In exchange for your assistance in dealing with the Cythera threat, we would be willing to overlook certain irregularities in your civilization's development." "Irregularities," Admiral Reese repeated, his tone flat. "Your species' tendency toward violence, your military research, your rather primitive approach to conflict resolution," the Centauran delegate elaborated. "With proper guidance and integration into hegemony society, these unfortunate traits could be corrected over time." Chen watched as every human officer in the room tensed. The delegates were essentially offering to civilize humanity in exchange for their help fighting a war the hegemony couldn't win on its own. Admiral Reese stood slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want us to fight your war for you, then submit to your authority so you can fix what you see as our flaws. The hegemony offers stability, peace, and prosperity to all member species," Cythera insisted. "Your people could benefit greatly from integration with our advanced society." "Your advanced society," Admiral Reese said, "just lost an entire fleet to an enemy that my people destroyed in 2 hours. Perhaps you should reconsider who needs fixing." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The vegan delegate released a cloud of nervous pheromones that made several humans wrinkle their noses. "Admiral," Cythera said, her musical voice taking on a sharper edge, "surely you understand the reality of the situation. The Cythera threat is beyond any one species' ability to handle. Only through unified action under hegemony leadership can we hope to prevail." Chen decided it was time to speak up. "Delegate, with respect, your unified action consisted of sending luxury cruise ships against an enemy designed for war. The only reason we're having this conversation is because Deathworlders don't wait for committee approval to defend themselves." "The term Deathworlder is considered pejorative," the Centauran said stiffly. "Good," Chen replied. "It should be. We earned it." Admiral Reese moved to the conference room's main display, activating a holographic map of the galaxy. Red markers showed confirmed Cythera positions, yellow indicated threatened systems, and blue marked human-controlled space. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never learned to lose gracefully. "The Terran Defense Fleet will continue to engage Cythera forces wherever we encounter them. We will do this not because the hegemony commands it, but because the Cythera represent a threat to all organic life in this galaxy." He gestured to the red markers. "We will fight them our way, using our tactics, our weapons, and our understanding of warfare. Any hegemony forces that want to assist us are welcome to do so, provided they follow human command protocols and accept human leadership in military matters. Delegate Sithara's blue skin flushed darker with what Chen recognized as anger. The Hegemony Council will never accept subordination to a species that has not even achieved full membership status. Then the Hegemony Council will continue to lose fleets until there's nothing left to lose, Admiral Reese said calmly. The choice is yours. The three delegates exchanged glances, their body language clearly communicating their displeasure with the humans' response. Finally, Sithara spoke again. The Council will need time to consider your proposal. In the meantime, perhaps we could discuss resource sharing and intelligence cooperation on a limited basis. Intelligence cooperation would be useful, Chen admitted. Your sensor networks could help us track Kythera movement patterns, but understand that any information you provide will be used to plan military operations that may not meet your usual standards of proportional response. The Vegan delegate released another cloud of pheromones, this one clearly expressing confusion. What do you mean by disproportional response? Admiral Reese smiled, and Chen was reminded of why other species found humans unsettling. When the Kythera attack one of our colonies, we don't just defend it. We hunt down every ship in their fleet and destroy them. When they threaten civilians, we don't negotiate or offer humanitarian aid. We find their base of operations and eliminate it completely. That sounds like, Sithara began. Genocide, Chen finished. Yes, that's exactly what it is. The Kythera represent an existential threat to every organic species in this galaxy. They cannot be reasoned with, rehabilitated, or contained. They can only be destroyed utterly and completely. The conference room fell silent as the delegates absorbed the implications of what they were hearing. The hegemony had built their civilization on the belief that all conflicts could be resolved through diplomacy and compromise. They were facing an enemy that understood only consumption and conquest, and they needed allies who thought the same way. There will be civilian casualties, the Centauran said quietly. There already are, Admiral Reese replied. The difference is that our way leads to fewer of them in the long run. Every Kythera ship we don't destroy today will consume a dozen more worlds tomorrow. The meeting continued for several hours, with the delegates gradually accepting that their options were limited. They could work with humanity on human terms, or they could continue fighting a losing war with their own inadequate methods. In the end, they chose survival over pride. As the delegates departed to consult with their respective governments, Chen remained behind with Admiral Reese and several other senior officers. Think they'll actually follow through? Asked Commander Walsh of the Thunderbolt. Doesn't matter, Reese replied. With or without hegemony support, we have a job to do. Dr. Kim's analysis confirms what we suspected. The Kythera gets stronger with every victory. That means we can't afford to lose any battles. Chen nodded, understanding the mathematics involved. It also means we need to end this war quickly, before they have time to integrate their recent conquests. Agreed. I want task forces deployed to every system within 50 light years of confirmed Kythera positions. We're going to hunt them down systematically and destroy every bioship we can find. The meeting broke up with officers returning to their ships to prepare for the expanded campaign. Chen found herself walking back to the Vengeance alongside Commander Torres, both of them lost in thought. Commander, Torres said finally, do you think we're doing the right thing? Chen considered the question as they passed through the flagship's corridors. Around them, human crew members went about their duties with the calm efficiency that came from centuries of fighting for survival. The hegemony thinks we're savages, she said finally. They're probably right. But sometimes the galaxy needs savages to deal with problems that civilized people can't handle. She paused at an observation deck, looking out at the stars that held both wonders and horrors in equal measure. The Kythera made one critical mistake, she continued. They assumed that because humanity was quarantined and despised, we were also weak. They thought they could expand into hegemony space without consequences because no one would be willing to stop them. Torres joined her at the window, watching as human ships moved through space with predatory grace. They forgot that Deathworlders don't stay down when something tries to kill them. We get back up, we learn from our mistakes, and we make sure that whatever hurt us never gets the chance to do it again. In the distance, Chen could see the wreckage of the Cathara fleet they had destroyed, drifting through space as a warning to anyone foolish enough to threaten the species that had learned to kill before it learned to dream. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when Deathworlders decided to fight back, and Chen suspected that lesson would be written in fire and blood across 1,000 star systems. The Cathara had wanted to reclaim their ancient empire. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous: humanity's capacity for righteous violence in defense of those who could not defend themselves. It was going to be a very short war.